That was the period 2016. In 2017, on that particular issue, because the audit chamber did not get the information that they wanted from the ministry, they then went on to a different process. Instead of providing a report, they provided an advice, to which no response was required in that sense. It was not a request from the audit chamber to provide information or anything like that. We checked, we saw nothing came in from the audit chamber in February 2017. And we asked the audit chamber if they can send to us whatever was sent out back then, and please indicate where it was delivered or to whom it was delivered. Apparently in March, indeed, that advice was sent out, and it was delivered by at the Illidge Road. And there was some communication, you know, previously the minister sat at the Illidge Road, and now I'm in the main building. So apparently that created some how you say, some confusion where it did not, the report did not reach me on time. We had other reports, we had other items from the audit chamber that did come to us that we responded to. We looked at that report. Everything that is in that, or the advice, everything that is in the advice are some of the things that we have been tackling since January, since I've taken office. And they are not all issues that the general public is aware of or may even not be interested in, considering some of the stuff and the questions and remarks that have been, you know, been in the newspapers. I can give you one example, for instance. The Miss Lally Center, which for everyone is there, is physically there. We do not see the Miss Lally Center as, how you say, something that is a problem in any sense, but Miss Lally Center officially doesn't exist. Miss Lally Center is a project that was instituted for a period of 2 years. That 2 years period ended in December of last year. The project life has been extended. With all of the confusion that comes along with that is that, for instance, the personnel of Miss Lally Center, who are part of the big personnel problems that the ministry have, their situations cannot be really regulated because of that situation. The budget in Miss Lally Center is not budgeted as a department, it is budgeted as a subsidy, etc., etc. We can go on. When I took office, I said that the intention is not to look back and see what happened or whatever, but is to fix it. And that's what I'm doing. I don't have time and energy to point fingers and say who did this bad or who did that bad. We have to fix those problems, and that's why we're fixing those problems. And some of those things, I did not, how you say, address those in public, because some of them, especially personnel matters, I believe should be solved internally. And I can, and I've said on different occasions, I can understand the frustration of some of the personnel and why they are going to the courts. I think I made a remark and said on a weekly basis, and that they would win every time they go, because these things need to be fixed. So we are busy doing that, and I've assured the audit chamber that the Ministry of Justice respect the task of the audit chamber, and that in any way under this minister that we will cooperate fully with the audit chamber. They have sent us the whatever information was pending, and we have already started responding to those. We had a similar situation with the ombudsman, and where the report was not positive because no responses, etc., were given. We have corrected that situation, and that's how we move on. The responsibility is now mine, and we are dealing with it, and I will not shun away from it.
Stephen Cerulean, PJD2 Radio. Good morning. We have the floor.
Thank you, Cedric. Good morning, Mr. Dice. My question is to Minister Busman. The renovation process for the prison has already started. You're now looking at the fencing, the interior, and what have you. How much is budgeted for this project overall?
Oh, off the bat, I don't know. The funds for the renovation project has been there already. The funds were budgeted. I think this part that is being done now is about 200, don't hold me on the exact figure, about 200, 250,000 guilders. In the capital expense budget that was recently sent on, and all of us are waiting anxiously for the go by the Minister of Finance when we can start using it. Those other parts are taken up into that. So the fencing, there's a corridor way to secure more security. There's now two separate buildings basically loose from each other. They would be joined by I think to enhance the security and put equipment there that metal detectors and whatever in that part of it. Also, there's financing for to start the work on the Sorimar building, on the Simpson Bay prison or detention center. So those, as we get to start in those projects, then I would provide more detailed information on them. But the funds are now made available to be able to start those projects.
Thank you, Stephen. Bibi?
Thank you, Cedric. Minister Lee, I asked you this more than once, and I also submitted a LOB request for the Van Kemenade report. Can you tell me from that report, with the reports now that you have in hand, have you have had any agreement with the St. Martin Medical Center as to how you're going to proceed with improving healthcare on St. Martin?
Yeah, thanks, Bibi. Yes, I received your LOB request for the Van Kemenade report. The request is being studied. As I've mentioned to you, this is a process. There was a meeting between the hospital and the ministry. I think it was a very constructive meeting. The outcome, we were working towards some sort of an agreement, let's say, between all the parties, just to show goodwill as a milestone to say, okay, look, hey, we're on the right track. In principle, everyone's on the same page in terms of working together and cooperating. As I've told you in the past, for me, if we are going to improve the quality of healthcare in this country, all stakeholders need to be on board. That was one of the reasons for the Van Kemenade report. So that progress is being made. I have a very full plate. I can only move as fast as resources allow. As you know, the director at the hospital's not in place. So we're moving, not at the pace I would like to, but we're moving in a positive direction. So do I wish it would move quicker? Of course. I wish everything would move quicker. But it's moving, and it's moving in the right direction. So we will study your request and come back to you on that. You're welcome.
Gilbert?
Thank you. One brief remark, if I may. The remark from the audit chamber that they're not responsible for what the papers write, I agree to that, but the article I wrote was literally based on the report. There's no difference between the content of the report and the content of the article. Having said that, thank you for your answer. My question for Minister Lee, do we have fluoride in our water?
Fluoride, I'm not 100% sure, so I probably wouldn't comment, but so it would need to be verified. I would suggest you could contact the inspector, but I don't believe so. I believe in Curacao they were, but I don't believe we are here, but it needs to be verified.
Stephen.
And fluoride for those is in particular for the health of people's teeth. Yeah.
If I may stay with you, Minister Lee, how is the agreement between Health City Cayman Islands and St. Martin working?
Recall it was a pilot project between SZV and Health City, so it wasn't an agreement with the government of St. Martin. The idea behind it was, I think SZV had a backlog of some 105 patients that they would try a pilot with Health City to try and work through some of their backlog in patients. Specifically, I think it was more towards urology and neurology, and that project, I believe, should be, if not completed, almost completed. Anecdotally, one of the points that I've noticed as part of the project is far too many of the patients that were sent, in my opinion, percentage-wise, were really for consultations or for basically a visit to the doctor's office, not necessarily for actual activities or surgeries to be performed. But the services were not available locally, and it really highlighted for me the issue that we need to find a better way to structure foreign doctors, visiting doctors, some sort of relationship that instead of shipping patients out, that we try and bring specialists who, if they're not available locally, to come on some sort of a rotating basis so that we can provide closer service and also save money instead of paying for air and hotel. So that's, again, something that we're working on. That still has to be confirmed, but that's sort of an anecdotal observation from what looks like came out of the first pilot project. But there is no agreement between government and Health City. It's a relationship between SNV and Health City, and I believe they're working on trying to see what's the next step now.
Thank you, Stephen. Bibi?
Thank you, Cedric. Minister Lee, I'll continue with you. I think last week or earlier this week, the inspectorate also sent out a release regarding the implementation or working on the big registration. And right there you see comments or concerns were the amount of specialists leaving St. Martin Medical Center, which you can say now would increase the amount of persons that would have to be sent overseas. Are you concerned about this, and have you addressed this with St. Martin Medical Center?
I have not addressed, I'm not aware of exactly who's leaving on what schedule or what specialties or for what reasons. It's a comment I think you've made in the past. Look, in general, as we're working on our healthcare system, as you all know, we're working very hard on a new hospital. New hospital is simply a facility, it's a building. We need to make sure that the entire healthcare system is working properly. Having properly trained, qualified specialists is a critical part of making sure our healthcare system's working, which is why, parallel to everything we've been working on the BIC legislation is a critical part. And so for those that aren't familiar, right now, Holland has a registration for medical professionals, and if you're registered in Holland, basically, you can practice here. But it creates a difficulty for medical specialists who are coming from anywhere else. The whole process is a cumbersome process. And this even affects the possibility for visiting physicians. This affects French physicians being able to come over to the Dutch side. So while we share, one island, and it makes all the sense in the world to share resources, our legislation is problematic in that sense. So that's why we've been putting effort into the BIC legislation. There is a draft that is now up for discussion, and that draft will go to begin the process of consultation with different stakeholders. But one of the discussions with the hospital has been that they feel very frustrated in the whole process of trying to get specialists approved. In other words, it's a cumbersome process. It's not a particularly user-friendly process. And so I'm aware of that. I assume that's related to keeping the staff at proper levels in the hospital. And that's something, again, that is part of our discussions as a result of the Van Kemenade report. How do we streamline this process to give the best quality and make it simpler for everybody? You're welcome.
Hilbert.
Yes, thank you. Minister Jacobs, a couple of weeks ago, Desiree Winkel, that's a fitness trainer, conquered Mount Everest. She was with a little flag of St. Martin, I remember well. Did your ministry do anything to acknowledge that achievement? Or are you still planning to do that?
We weren't informed before she left. I'm not sure if we were informed before she left, and that's one of the Yeah, the issues that we have, we usually get the information after the fact, especially in cases where we have not been requested for assistance. If we've been requested for assistance for something, we usually know someone's going out and we can monitor it. But I'm not sure whether we knew in advance, but the sports department has been in contact. It was brought to my attention and has been in contact with her and the contact that was here in St. Martin since then. And of course, in our trajectory of promoting St. Martin's athletes, she also will be highlighted. We also had Ms. Irato that had some successes during that same period of time. And we are checking to see, because we don't have, once an athlete is representing St. Martin, there's a sports federation that they should belong to in order to be able to say they are national athletes of St. Martin. So once we can ascertain how that goes, of course the government does its best to provide them sometime with some national gear or wear, etc., to be able to represent. But Mrs. Winkle was already at Mount Everest, mounted the mountain. We are very proud of her. Yes, and so of course we're proud of that, and the department is in contact with her. So we can look forward to what will come out of that.
Stephen.
Thank you. I have two questions, very briefly, for Minister Jacobs.
But we only really need one at this point. In fairness, Stephen.
Minister, the situation at the Little League Stadium, work completion and what have you, how soon do we foresee the name being changed?
Those are issues I don't really get involved in, Stephen. For me, we fought hard to be able to finalize, especially the interior of the Little League Stadium, for purposes such that, as we know, Coach Tom is out there with containers and making do and doing all types of things in the afternoon for students who come there to play baseball with very little funding. The Little League Association and any other association can request funding to assist and have programs. In fact, several entities are looking for programs to sponsor and have approached me. But the organization has to be equipped to have a program that is running, has coaches, et cetera, et cetera. So they have to have a proposal. And that is what, because our associations are mainly volunteers who are doing this after work, et cetera, having the time to sit down with a project team to plan a project, et cetera, remains an issue. So I also would like to see the field handed over as such. It hasn't been officially handed over to the Little League Association. They continue to use it as it was there, under their use all that time. But some formalities still have to take place, and then the association will do what they have to do when the name change is concerned, I am sure.
Thank you, Stephen. Bibi.
Minister Jacob, I think it's last week or the week before, I asked you about the situation at NEPA, and you said that the inspectorate was investigating and you were awaiting her report. Can you tell us if that investigation has completed, and if you got that report, and if you can now give us an update?
I think I updated on my last time here that the inspectorate did visit the school on more than one occasion, spoke with teachers, management, and staff. Students, management, and staff there, and were able to submit a report to me. They also met with the board of the AVE Foundation, gave their recommendations. Many of my recommendations were already on the action plan of the AVE board. Subsequent to that, all the stakeholders who have appointed members to the board met together with the board to receive further clarity on the goings-ons. And I think we had a very fruitful meeting, and we'll be issuing a joint press release as stakeholders. So not necessarily from the Minister of Education, but all stakeholders, namely the Chamber of Labor Unions, the Chamber of Commerce, FAVE, which is the St. Martin Academy School Board, and the MPC Sundial School Board, ZVOBA, who all appointed people to these boards. So we've received quite some information. As I mentioned before, several of the issues that they are faced with are personnel issues, which I'm not going to get into. The ministry inspectorate also reported on recommendations moving forward where that is concerned. But we, as the stakeholders, once our press release is out, then there will be, I believe, much more clarity. I believe we should focus on maintaining an environment where I believe a lot of the negativity hurts the institution more than it helps. We as government are open. We are here every week for questioning. If anyone has issues and complaints, the school, even after the last set of issues, established a student government association. They have a road to follow to make complaints. The Chamber of Labor Unions, while they had a member on the board, they are now assessing whether they want to have a member on the board or whether they just want to function as advisors to the board based on the labor situations. So all of that is being looked at, and the goal of the Institute remains first and foremost on all our minds, and in moving forward, we would like to hope that those with complaints use a regular modes of communications, and if they have letters that they would like to write to the minister has an address right here at the government building. We have email addresses, and we have the Department of Education that also meets monthly with all school boards on St. Martin. At this time of the year, each school board is tasked to evaluate performance, etc., and take the necessary steps moving forward in the best interest of their institutions. Why we continue to shine this negative light on an institution that has so much to give to the youth and the adult working population on St. Martin is besides me. We are doing all we can to make sure everything happens in the correct order, and that much I can assure you.
Thank you. Hilbert.
Yeah.
Yes. Minister Jacobs. The St.
Sorry.
Martin, okay, the St. Martin Sports Council Foundation was established a couple of years ago with the objective to promote sports tourism to St. Martin. Is that foundation working in any way together with your sports department? Because I just read in the National Gazette that they're in trouble with the tax department.
The
Are
St.
they still
Martin
functioning?
Sports
Sports
Council?
Council Foundation.
Okay,
Never heard
that
of?
organization, since I have been here, I've never had the opportunity to meet with. We have some organizations, I guess I heard yesterday a little bit about some of the listings that were made in that gazette, and some of these organizations could be defunct and no longer functioning. So I have no clue who that organization is. Currently, government is collaborating. We have a tripartite, you can call it that then, which is the Sports Federation, the Sports Department, which falls within the ministry, and the National Sports Institute, which we have set up as a foundation for the execution of sports and the maintenance of our facilities. So those are the three institutes we work with currently.
Thank you, Hilbert. Stephen.
Minister Bosman, you met with the Chamber of Labor Unions last week. Can you tell us as to how the discussion went?
Yeah, I surely can. I think it was a very positive and constructive discussion. You know, what appeared in the newspaper, you know, was very loaded, and they were very upset, referring to the injustices in the labor ministry.
Justice Minister.
Sorry, the Justice Ministry. Yeah, the labor. Yeah, in the Justice Ministry, and the first part of the meeting was discussing that, finding out what was exactly meant, and those were all of the ongoing problems and situations, personnel issues, some of them pending for years. And I just we did an inventory to try to find out all of those individual cases throughout the ministry. And I think on court cases alone, we have like 30-something individuals involved. They are, it would be close to 70 or not, if not more, individuals within the ministry who have some issue pending, whether it is a legal issue, whether it is something with a disciplinary action, their legal position. And an inventory was done. A task force was put together. So with the unions, we went into details explaining them exactly what the situation was. One of the issues also is, for instance, with the police department, the police got permission to recruit new officers. The unions wanted involvement because, like I said before, all of the issues were discussed with the unions. I had regular discussions with the unions, and it was decided that they would form part of the selection committee. Not to stir up any wars again or whatever with the unions, but it is not efficient that if you have 10 unions, that each union would have a member on the committee. It works counterproductive. So we ask the unions to get together and have a member representing the unions on the committee. If there are 3 unions representing, for instance, police officers, it's not like we are dealing differently with the police officers that belong to one union or the other. It's all the same. So if they would get together and say, listen, look, Peter would be representing us on the committee, that was the agreement. Then it seemed that some unions prefer to have their own representative. We did not entertain that. What we did was stick to the one representative, but added naturally a substitute. And they would select and inform who those would be, and then we can continue with the process, because if we keep fighting on those issues, then no recruitment is taking place. Then the same problems that we both claim that we want to resolve would be stagnated because we can't work together. So those problems have been discussed, have been resolved. We also agreed that I would meet on every 2 months with the unions. I think in the end it was a very positive and constructive meeting, and we are moving forward. So I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah.
Thank you very